Have you ever felt like your kindness is costing you more than it's giving back? Like the more you give, the more invisible you become? If you've ever stayed silent to keep the peace, said yes when your heart screamed no, or felt like people only love you when you're endlessly available, then this video might change your life. What if your suffering isn't because you're too kind, but because you've been taught to deny essential parts of yourself in the name of being good? Drawing from the deep and timeless insights of Carl Jung, we're about to uncover a powerful truth. Your shadow, the parts of you you've buried, ignored, or feared, may hold the key to your freedom, strength, and authentic kindness. This isn't just theory, it's transformation. In the next few minutes, we'll explore why excessive kindness often masks fear, how your inability to set boundaries could be sabotaging your happiness, and most importantly, how integrating your shadow can unlock a whole new version of yourself, one rooted in real strength and fearless love. Stay with us to the end, because you'll learn how to stop being drained by your kindness and start becoming someone who gives from fullness, not emptiness. This is the message you didn't know you were waiting for. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. Jung came to a haunting realization, one that still sends ripples through the way we understand kindness today. He saw that this idealized, sugar-coated version of goodness, the one where you're always available, always forgiving, always selfless, wasn't just misguided. It was dangerous. Because when we confuse kindness with self-sacrifice, when we're taught that love means having no boundaries, no needs, no voice, we slowly become our executioners. We cut ourselves down piece by piece, all in the name of being good. And here's the part that truly shook Jung, and honestly, it shakes me too. The more we chase this image of perfect goodness, the more we deny the messy, complicated, human parts of ourselves. And those parts, they don't disappear, they fester. They become what Jung called the shadow, those suppressed truths we try to bury under fake smiles and forced patience. But the shadow never stays buried. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The deeper you push it, the harder it fights to break free. And when it finally does, it explodes with force. Imagine your kindness as a glowing light. Society tells us to keep that light pure by shutting out everything else: our anger, our limits, our unmet needs. But Jung knew the truth. That's not how real light works. Real light doesn't need to pretend darkness doesn't exist. Real light shines through the darkness. True kindness isn't about erasing yourself. It's about embracing all of you, every part, even the ones you were told to hide. How many times have you heard that whisper inside saying, "Enough," but stuffed it down because you thought a good person wouldn't feel that way? How many times have you clenched your fists in quiet rage, cried in secret frustration, or swallowed your pain just to keep the peace? And every time you do that, every time you betray your truth to maintain your image, you don't grow holier, you grow hollow. You don't become more righteous. You become more broken. This message today isn't asking you to stop being kind. It's pleading with you to stop being kind at the expense of your soul. It's a wake-up call, an invitation to rise from the sleep of naive kindness and step into something far more powerful: conscious compassion, rooted in truth and self-awareness. Because real kindness isn't the absence of darkness. It's the courage to face it, to feel it, and to integrate it. Real kindness says, "I see my shadow, I honor it, and I still choose to love." What you're about to hear may rattle the walls of everything you believe about what it means to be good. It might push against your understanding of love, selflessness, and spiritual worth. But if you have the bravery to listen, if you're willing to question the story you've lived by, you'll find something extraordinary waiting on the other side. A truth that doesn't shrink you. A truth that sets you free. Because true kindness doesn't strip you down. It fills you up. It doesn't weaken you. It arms you with grace. It doesn't make you smaller, it reveals your wholeness. This is the sacred, uncomfortable, yet beautiful wisdom that Carl Jung gifted to us. To be truly good, we must first become truly whole. And that journey, my friend, begins the moment we stop running from our own shadow and start meeting it with open arms. When Jung spoke of the shadow, he wasn't offering a metaphor. He was pointing to something very real, a force living inside each one of us. A quiet, exiled part of our psyche that we were taught to fear, to repress, and to disown. It's where we've hidden the rawest truths, our rage, our unspoken desires, our longing to be seen, our right to say no and mean it. For those of us who've wrapped our identity around being the good one, the helper, the one who's always there for everyone else, the shadow feels like a monster. The thought that we could have darkness inside, it terrifies us. Because if we admit to it, what happens to the perfect image we've worked so hard to maintain? But here's the truth. That denial comes at a soul-crushing cost. And if we keep paying it, we lose the most precious thing we have ourselves. When we reject our shadow, when we act as if it doesn't exist, as if we can simply ignore it into submission, we give it more power than we realize. What we suppress doesn't vanish. It gathers strength in the dark corners of our psyche, waiting for the moment it can no longer be contained. It becomes wild, volatile, and unpredictable, like trying to dam a raging river with your bare hands. Eventually, it crashes through everything you've built to keep it hidden. This is the painful truth most people don't want to face. Repressed energy doesn't fade away, it ferments. It twists. It mutates. It leaks out in distorted, unconscious ways that hurt us and those around us. For people who identify as endlessly kind, this often shows up in the most heartbreaking ways. That soft-spoken person who offers help again and again begins to feel unappreciated, even used. They say yes with a smile, but inside, resentment quietly blooms like poison ivy in the dark. They stay silent when others cross the line, but that silence carries a weight, a hidden fury no one sees. And when they look around and realize no one ever asks what they need, it breaks their heart in the quiet corners of the night. The more we chase this illusion of perfect goodness, the more fragile we become in the face of our own shadow. It's a cruel paradox. In trying to be entirely selfless, we often lose touch with ourselves. Suppress your anger, and it won't disappear. It will twist itself into passive aggressiveness, seeping into your relationships through sarcasm, bitterness, and subtle acts of withdrawal. Deny your craving for recognition, and it might twist into manipulation, a desperate attempt to feel seen without ever admitting the desire. Pretend you don't need anything, and slowly, without even knowing it, you begin to feed off others emotionally, draining their presence just to feel alive. Carl Jung never painted the shadow as a villain. On the contrary, he insisted it was not our enemy, but an essential part of our inner architecture. Yes, it contains our darker impulses, but also our untapped brilliance, our lost voice, our sacred right to say enough. It holds our power, the power to stand firm, to speak truth, to say no without shame. When we reject our shadow, we don't just lock away our pain, we also lock away our passion. We lose not only the fire that can burn, we lose the fire that can warm. Think about the person who has always been the good one. Maybe you know someone like this. Maybe it's you. They were raised to believe anger is ugly, that needing space is selfish, that saying no is something only bad people do. So they swallow their truth, day after day, smile after smile. But in doing so, they don't just silence their anger, they silence their very essence. They mute their voice. They minimize their presence. And over time, their kindness becomes a cage, a prison of their own making, gilded in politeness, but hollow at its core. Jung saw through that illusion. He understood that this kind of kindness is not a virtue. It's fear dressed up in niceties, fear of being disliked, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as too much or not enough. It's a desperate dance to stay loved, even if it means disappearing. But here's the hope. It doesn't have to stay that way. True kindness isn't about perfection or people-pleasing. It's about wholeness. It's about embracing your fire without burning others. It's about setting limits without guilt and choosing generosity not from fear, but from fullness. The shadow, when brought into the light, becomes a source of unimaginable strength. It's like a mysterious garden at night, terrifying at first, but once you step into it with curiosity and courage, you find not just weeds, but wildflowers. Not just thorns, but hidden seeds of power you never knew were yours. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. That's where naive, self-sacrificing kindness evolves into conscious, mature compassion. That's where wounded giving becomes soulful service. For Jung, the most profound spiritual work isn't about fixing ourselves or banishing the darkness. It's about learning to dance with it, to make peace with the parts of us we were taught to fear. Only when we stop running from our shadow can we finally discover the radiant, powerful, fully human person we were always meant to be. It means finally understanding at a soul level that your anger is not a flaw. It is not shameful. It is not something to repress to remain good. No, your anger is sacred, just as sacred as your ability to love. Your boundaries are not barriers to kindness, they are the framework that allows your love to remain pure, not performative. And that aching, quiet need inside you to be seen, heard, acknowledged, that is not vanity. That is not selfishness. That too is holy. This is the very first step on the road toward a richer, more grounded, more real kind of kindness. The realization that your shadow, the parts of yourself you've hidden out of fear, is not the enemy. It is a missing part of your wholeness, waiting patiently to be seen, embraced, and honored like the wounded child. It often is. And when you finally find the courage to look it in the eyes, to no longer run, to no longer bury it in endless niceness, you might be shocked to discover that what you feared the most was the exact peace you needed to feel whole again. Blind kindness comes at a devastating cost. Not just in burnout, not just in tears cried in the bathroom after doing too much for people who never thanked you. No, the cost runs deeper. It comes in the form of broken dreams you kept putting off, relationships where you gave more than you could afford, and a life that, on the surface, looks beautiful but deep down feels only half-lived. It sneaks into your days like fog, appearing as relentless fatigue that no amount of sleep cures. As that dull ache in your chest after another. Yes, you didn't want to give. As that haunting loneliness, even when surrounded by people who say they love you but never truly see you. Now, think about someone whose entire identity is built around self-sacrifice. Someone who has been told over and over again, "You're such a good person," while inside, they're slowly dissolving. This person doesn't just give their time, their attention, their energy. They give away pieces of their soul. Every single time they push aside their needs to serve someone else. Every time they silence their truth to avoid conflict. Every time they say yes, while everything in their body pleads no, they chip away at their essence. And here's the heartbreaking part. This person wears no crown of thorns. Their suffering is invisible. It looks like insomnia and anxiety, like constant worry over other people's problems, like friendships and marriages where they are always the anchor but never the sail, like a schedule so overstuffed with other people's needs they forget they even have their own. Society tragically applauds this. We call it noble. We call it generous, but we rarely talk about the quiet, suffocating self-neglect that lies behind it all. Jung saw that this pattern almost always starts in childhood. Maybe you were the peacemaker in your family, the one who learned early that being good was the way to keep things safe. Maybe you believe deep down that your worth depended on how much you could give, how little you could need. These early beliefs become emotional shackles. They bind us to unhealthy patterns, an unconscious self-sacrifice that we call love, but feel more like servitude. People who live in this cycle of blind kindness tend to follow a predictable script. They are the rock, the confidant, the emotional safety net for everyone around them. But when they are hurting, when they are drowning, the room goes silent. They become surrounded by people who are so used to receiving from them, they never even think to ask, "Are you okay?" It's a unique and brutal kind of loneliness to be loved for your kindness, but never truly known for your heart. This constant giving doesn't just deplete your physical body. It drains your spirit. It bleeds joy from your days. It dims your creative spark. It's a slow spiritual death, an erosion of your true self in service to everyone else's needs. And in this imbalance, a toxic dynamic takes root. The kinder you are, the more people lean on you. But the more they learn, the more invisible you become. You morph into a role, a resource, a giver who slowly forgets what it even feels like to receive. We like to dress this up in virtue. We say things like, "That's just who I am." But beneath it, it's often not virtue. It's fear. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear of losing love if we ever dare to ask for it. And it becomes a prison. You stop being a person, and you become a function in everyone else's life. A human vending machine of support, never allowed to break, rest, or ask for anything in return. But here's the gut-wrenching irony. This excessive, unconditional kindness doesn't only harm you, it also hurts the very people you think you're saving. By constantly rescuing others, by making yourself endlessly available, you rob them of the opportunity to grow, to take responsibility, and to learn the lessons life is trying to teach them. And all that unspoken resentment, that bitterness you try to hide behind your gentle tone and tight smile, it seeps into every connection, poisoning the intimacy you're trying so hard to protect. That's the hidden cost of blind kindness. It doesn't just steal your time, your peace, your energy. It steals you, your voice, your dreams, your sacred right to exist as more than just a helper. We begin to drift further and further from who we are. We become pale reflections of ourselves, fading into the background of our own lives, living for others, while slowly forgetting how to live as ourselves. But here's the truth. No one tells you. There is a way out. Integrating your shadow, facing the parts of you you've buried and feared, isn't easy. It's not neat or comfortable. It demands courage, brutal honesty, and a willingness to break long-held patterns. But it's worth it, because on the other side of that discomfort is freedom, power, wholeness, and finally, peace. It's like stepping into a dark room that's been sealed shut for years and finally turning on the light. At first, it's overwhelming. Dust, clutter, forgotten pieces of yourself scattered everywhere. It's unsettling to see. But you can't clean what you can't see. You can't heal what you won't face. Only when you begin to see clearly can you finally begin to restore, realign, and transform. That first flicker of light reveals a sobering truth. So much of our so-called kindness, our endless giving, our inability to say no, has been a form of avoidance, a beautifully wrapped disguise for fear. We avoid conflict because we're scared of rejection. We avoid saying what we feel because we fear judgment. We avoid being seen as anything less than good because deep down we're terrified. We won't be loved if we show up as our full, messy, human selves. Behind every act of excessive kindness lies a core, raw vulnerability, the aching fear of not being worthy of love unless we're bending over backward for others. But real transformation? That takes a different kind of courage, a soul, deep bravery. It asks us to risk something we've been avoiding for years, disappointing the people who've grown used to us being endlessly available. It's like tearing up an unspoken, one-sided contract we've carried since childhood. The old agreement whispered, "I'll be everything you need as long as you love me." But now, a new agreement must rise. I'll be authentic, even if that means I won't always please you. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. This is the beginning of healing, of rising, of reclaiming who we are. And contrary to what we've been taught, integrating the shadow, embracing the parts we've hidden does not make us cold or cruel. It doesn't harden us. On the contrary, it softens us most profoundly. It gives birth to a kindness that is no longer performative, but powerful. Not because it comes from fear, but because it rises from truth. It's the difference between a flickering candle that struggles to stay lit and a roaring fire that brings warmth, safety, and light to those who gather near without burning itself out in the process. True integration happens when we realize that boundaries are not walls, they are acts of self-respect, and setting them is just as sacred as the moments when we give. Because real power doesn't come from dominating others. It doesn't come from being the loudest in the room or the most agreeable at the table. Real power, the kind Jung spoke of, emerges from stillness, from the quiet strength of knowing who you are and no longer needing to be anything else. That kind of power allows you to stand firm without becoming rigid, to hold space for others without losing yourself in the process, to give freely, beautifully, not out of desperation, but from a full well. Kindness, when rooted in integration, becomes like a tree with deep, unshakable roots. It no longer seeks validation from others. It doesn't have to prove anything. Its presence alone speaks volumes. It gives shade without needing applause. It stands tall, even when storms come. And here lies the paradox that surprises so many. The more you accept your shadow, your anger, your truth, your sacred no, the more kind you become. Because you're no longer giving to earn love. You're giving from love that includes yourself. That's where generosity flows, not from obligation but from overflow, where compassion stops draining you and starts fueling you. But this new way of being requires a commitment to one thing above all else: authenticity. It means honoring your anger as a compass that shows when a line has been crossed. It means embracing your no with the same reverence as your yes. And it means seeing that not all your shadow parts are shameful. Some hold your deepest wisdom, your intuition, your discernment, your fierce protective instincts. The kindness that grows from this integration becomes refined, discerning, clear. It knows when to draw close and when to lovingly step back. It knows that not everyone is meant to receive your light, and that's okay. It's no longer a kindness that leaks out aimlessly in hopes of being enough. It becomes deliberate, grounded, strong. It honors the giver and the receiver. It understands that boundaries are not rejection. They are expressions of respect. And this changes everything. Because when you start living this way, you no longer walk through life like a flickering candle, slowly burning out. You become a lighthouse, radiating strength, warmth, and guidance without being depleted. Your kindness in this form becomes limitless, not because it never says no, but because it chooses when and how to give. It becomes more powerful precisely because you no longer need everyone's approval. You're not giving up on survival anymore. You're giving from wholeness. This is the heart of shadow integration. You are no longer kind to avoid being disliked. You are kind because you are whole, because you know who you are, because you've made peace with the parts of you you used to hide. At the core of this new kindness is truth, not fear, not guilt, truth. Jung understood that the development of healthy boundaries wasn't just good advice. It was essential to becoming psychologically whole. Yet for many of us who were conditioned to be endlessly kind, the idea of setting limits feels unnatural, even threatening. We fear that if we say no, we'll lose love. That if we stop giving, we'll stop mattering. But this is where ancient wisdom meets modern healing. Boundaries aren't barriers. They're sacred lines that define where you end and someone else begins. They protect your energy, your soul, your time. They make love sustainable. And learning to draw them begins with one radical belief. You are worthy. Not because of what you give, but because of who you are. Your worth is not earned through self-erasure. Recognizing this is not selfish. It's a revolutionary act of honesty. When we start to value ourselves, the way we move through the world transforms. We stop overextending to be accepted. We stop handing out pieces of our soul to prove our goodness. And we finally understand that healthy relationships are built on reciprocity, not performance. Giving and receiving must flow in balance, or they become exploitation. With this new awareness, we begin to see clearly. Every time we allow someone to overstep our boundaries, we're not just harming ourselves, we're enabling them to stay unconscious, to avoid accountability. Genuine kindness, wise kindness, includes the strength to say, this is where I end, and this is where you begin. Because that protects not only our giving, but the dignity of those who receive. And the most beautiful paradox of all, the fewer relationships we allow in this new way of being, the deeper they become, because those who remain aren't just there for what we offer. They're there for us, the real us, the whole us, the one we were always meant to be. Yes, it's true. Some people may drift away when we stop being endlessly available, when we stop saying yes out of habit and start saying no from a place of truth. The crowd may thin, and that's okay. It is, because those who remain, the ones who still call, who still care, who still show up, will be the ones who see and respect you as a whole person, not just as a giver, not just as a helper, but as a human being with needs, limits, fire, and depth. This is where real work begins, in learning a new emotional language, one we were never taught in school or modeled at home. The practice of setting boundaries is not just about saying no, it's about developing an entirely new emotional vocabulary. We start to notice the subtle but powerful difference between authentic guilt, that inner nudge that tells us we've strayed from our values, and manipulated guilt, which creeps in when someone else's disappointment tries to twist our boundaries into selfishness. We begin to untangle what's truly ours to carry, and what we've been lugging around out of obligation, fear, or deeply ingrained patterns of self-erasure. And then comes the deeper truth, one we resist but desperately need to embrace: our time, our energy, our emotional capacity. They are not infinite. They are sacred, finite, precious. You cannot pour from an empty well. You cannot serve the world if your soul is starving. Maintaining boundaries is not a rejection of others. It is a commitment to yourself. It's how you make sure your kindness comes from a healthy, vibrant place, not from depletion and quiet resentment. True protection of your compassion doesn't come from building rigid walls or withdrawing in bitterness. No, it comes from something far more powerful: discernment. Wise discernment is knowing when to say yes and when to say not now, when to open your heart and when to protect your peace, when to pour into someone and when to step back and let them grow on their own. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment on number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. It's not about closing yourself off. It's about cultivating your life like a beautiful, living garden. Think of your emotional energy as a sacred space. That garden needs clear borders so it doesn't get trampled. It needs pruning and tending, rest and rain. Only when it's cared for properly can it truly bloom, offering beauty and nourishment to those who come close. When we care for our inner garden, our kindness doesn't fade, it flourishes. Because a well-tended soul can give without bitterness. It can love without losing itself. It can serve without breaking. This is the alchemy of transformation, a sacred, deeply personal process that begins the moment we allow both our light and our shadow to take a seat at the same table. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's like watching two rivers, one clear and sparkling, the other dark and mysterious, merge into a single powerful current. Neither light nor dark alone, but something stronger, richer, and truer. A new form of power is born from integration. This inner alchemy begins when we stop fighting who we are, when we stop trying to amputate the parts of ourselves that feel too intense, too needy, too angry, too vulnerable. Jung understood that true transformation never comes from rejection. It comes from relationship, from turning toward the parts of ourselves we've pushed away and asking, "What do you have to teach me?" Your anger isn't your enemy, it's your compass. It tells you when something has crossed a sacred boundary. Your resentment? It's the red flag waving wildly to tell you that you've been giving too much without receiving enough. Your sadness? It's the ache of a soul that's been neglected, pleading for tenderness and restoration. And when you listen, really listen, what you gain is not just insight, but strength. A strength that isn't loud or violent. It doesn't push. It doesn't demand. This strength is like gold, refined through the fires of self-awareness, not the brute force of dominance, and not the hollow submission of endless niceness, but a new kind of power, one that knows when to move forward with conviction and when to pause with grace, one that knows how to give with intention and how to preserve what is sacred. It's the power to speak only when speaking is true, to act only when action is aligned, to rest without guilt, to walk away without shame, to love without losing yourself. And those who reach this stage, those who commit to the messy, sacred work of integrating their shadow, develop something unmistakable: presence. They don't need to announce their power. They don't need to prove their goodness. They simply are steady, real, unapologetically whole. Their authenticity becomes their armor. Their integrity becomes their compass. Their truth becomes both shield and sword. They've stopped trying to control the world around them and mastered the world within. This is the quiet wisdom that glows from within. It's like a controlled flame, one that can warm a room or purify metal, depending on how it's used. Those who've come this far understand that their power is not meant to dominate others. It's meant to protect what is sacred, to guard their essence, to create safety, first within themselves and then around them. This is not a weakness. This is not selfishness. This is sacred strength. They've come to understand something most people never do: that kindness, without discernment, can be just as dangerous as power without compassion. One gives too much, the other takes too much. Both leave wounds in their wake. This new way of living, this way of walking through the world with open eyes and an anchored heart, requires constant awareness. Not the kind of vigilance that comes from fear or hyper-alertness, but a calm, awakened presence. A grounded clarity that says, "I know who I am, and I trust myself to act from the truth." It's like tending a thriving, balanced garden. Not every plant needs the same amount of sun. Some require more light. Others flourish in the shade. And a wise gardener doesn't try to treat them all the same. He learns, he listens, he adjusts. In the same sacred way, we must learn to nourish both our light and our shadow, not favoring one over the other, not labeling one as good and the other as bad, but recognizing that both are essential to our full bloom. The kindness that flows from this kind of self-knowledge is no longer reactive or fearful. It is no longer rooted in guilt or the need to be liked. It becomes intentional, mature, and deeply self-aware. It is a kindness that knows its worth. It no longer needs to be loud. It doesn't need to overextend itself. It doesn't keep giving to avoid rejection. This kindness can say no with grace and yes with joy. It doesn't resent its giving because it gives by choice, not from obligation. This kind of kindness doesn't fear the darkness in others because it has made peace with the darkness within. And this integration is not a destination you reach and check off. It's not a box you tick or a goal you conquer. It is an ongoing dance, a daily rhythm between shadow and light, between strength and softness, between offering and protecting. Every day becomes an opportunity to step into balance again, to check in with yourself, to ask, am I giving from overflow or emptiness? Am I loving from the truth or fear? This personal alchemy, this daily practice of choosing wholeness begins to ripple outward. Because the moment you allow yourself to be whole, you send an unspoken invitation to everyone around you. You're allowed to be whole too. When you live this way, you don't just change yourself, you shift the atmosphere. You become a living, breathing model of a new way to exist. One that is strong and soft, powerful and gentle, bold and loving. You show the world that it is possible to be deeply kind without losing yourself, to be grounded in compassion without being consumed by it, to hold others gently while still holding your boundaries firmly. And in doing so, you create something far more revolutionary than you may realize. You begin to model what it means to be truly human, not some sanitized, perfect version of humanity, but the real thing. Raw, tender, whole. This final transformation is not a surrender. It's a liberation. You come to see that real kindness was never meant to be a straitjacket. It was never supposed to suffocate you under the weight of expectations or obligations. Real kindness is a power that sets you free. It's not a mask you wear to be accepted. It is the unfiltered, radiant truth of who you are. A state of being where your compassion and your power no longer fight one another, but rise from the same sacred well within your soul, where your light and your shadow no longer pull you in opposite directions, but hold hands and walk with you toward your deepest becoming. The journey we've taken through Jung's wisdom is not just a psychological insight, it is a soul-level invitation, a quiet, holy call to rise, to no longer choose between love and limits, between softness and strength, between kindness and truth, to finally, fully embrace both. And the moment you do, your life will never be the same. Because once you stop denying your duality, once you choose to live in alignment with your whole self, you'll discover a kind of power that doesn't need permission. You'll become more complete, more rooted, and more capable than ever before of creating the life you were meant to live, not just a life of service, but a life of substance. That is the power of integration. That is the freedom of truth. That is what it means to live as a fully awakened human being. So now I want to ask you, what have you learned from this journey? What insight touched you the most? Was it the realization that kindness without boundaries can quietly destroy us? Or the truth that embracing your shadow doesn't make you broken, but finally makes you whole? We've explored the deep wisdom of Jung, unwrapped the layers of blind kindness, and uncovered the quiet strength that lives in setting boundaries, honoring your anger, and giving from a place of fullness rather than fear. Now, I invite you to take this beyond words. In the comments below, share one thing you've learned, and more importantly, one thing you will start practicing in your life starting today. Whether it's saying no without guilt, acknowledging your shadow, or permitting yourself to be both kind and powerful, I want to hear it. Let's learn from each other. Let's grow together. And if you found value in this message, if it stirred something inside you, please leave your comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole. And that, my friend, is more than enough.